Hello and welcome to the presentation video of results from Ireland's Labour Force Survey, or LFS, for Q3 2025. The LFS is a household survey carried out by the Central Statistics Office and is the official source for employment and unemployment estimates in Ireland. The official labour market classification of respondents to the survey is based on International Labour Organization, or ILO, concepts and definitions. And you can find out more information about the survey from our website or by contacting us at labour@cso.ie. The published infographic for Q3 is shown in this slide and presents headline LFS results for the quarter. The employment rate for those aged 15 to 64 was 74.7%, down 0.6 percentage points from Q3 2024. The unemployment rate for those aged 15 to 74 was 5.3%, up 0.8 percentage points since last year, and is the highest figure since 2021. The participation rate for those aged 15 and over was 66.5%, down 0.1 percentage points on last year. The annual change in employment and unemployment for the last 5 quarters is shown on the left. It shows that employment is increasing at a decreasing amount, while unemployment is increasing at an increasing amount. In the most recent quarter, employment increased by 30,600, while unemployment increased by 25,900. The number of people in employment, unemployment, and those not in the labour force for Q3 2024 and 2025 by ILO definition is shown on this slide. All three have increased since last year, with the largest increase in those not in the labour force, up 34,800 to almost 1.5 million. As previously mentioned, the number of persons in employment increased by 30,600 to a record 2,825,500, while unemployment increased by 25,900 to 155,400. In percentage terms, the additional 25,900 represented a 20% increase in unemployment since last year. Employment increased by 1.1%, which is the lowest rate since the pandemic. Those not in the labour force increased by 2.4% on the year, the highest rate in 3 years. Focusing now on the results for employment in Q3, the estimate for the number of people in employment was 2,825,500, an increase of 30,600 or 1.1% compared with Q3 2024. The employment rate for persons aged 15 to 64 is 74.7%, that's down 0.6 percentage points relative to a year ago. The seasonally adjusted estimate for the number of people in employment in Q3 was almost 2.8 million, increasing by just 1,900 or 0.1% compared with the last quarter, Q2 2025. The chart here shows the number of males and females in employment for Q3 2025 and the previous year. It shows that employment increased for both males and females. Males in employment increased 17,200 to almost 1.5 million, while females in employment increased by 13,400 to over 1.3 million. This slide, however, shows that while overall employment increased, the employment rate, that is the percentage of working age population in employment, has decreased from 75.3% to 74.7%. For males in Q3 2025, the employment rate was 78.5%, down 0.8 percentage points from 79.3% a year ago, while the employment rate for females stood at 70.9% this quarter, down from 71.4% this time last year. The chart in this slide presents the employment for different age groups for Q3 2024 and 2025. The largest age cohort in employment is the 35 to 44-year-olds at 696,000, followed by the 45 to 54 and the 25 to 34-year-olds with 664,000 and 566,900 in employment respectively. And this chart shows the annual percentage change in employment by age groups. Youth employment, those aged 15 to 24-year-old, decreased by 4.8% or 16,600. 35 to 44-year-olds declined by 0.5 percentage points or 3,500. The largest percentage increase was those the 65 and over, increasing 5.1% or 6,200. The largest volume increase was among the 25 to 34-year-olds. The 2.7% increase represented an increase of 14,900. The 6-year trend in full-time and part-time employment is shown in this slide. The number of full-time workers and part-time workers increased over the period to Q3 2025. The more than 2.4 million in full-time employment is an increase of 20% or almost 380,000 since Q3 2019, while it increased 1.6% in the last year. The 581,000 in part-time employment rose 22% over this period since before the pandemic and declined 0.7% since last year. The chart in this slide shows total employment by NACE economic sector. Human health and social work is the largest sector with 387,200, followed by industry and wholesale and retail trade with 353,800 and 329,300 respectively. The smallest sector is the administration and support services, followed by agriculture, forest and fishing and other services. While the chart here shows the top growing industrial sectors by NACE classification by employment volume growth in Q3 2025 with a year ago. The transportation and storage sector had the largest increase, adding 18,800 jobs, an increase of 15.9%. This is followed by industry, up by 10,700 or 3.1%, and human health and social work, which increased by 8,000 or 2.1%. The chart shows the bottom sectors by change in employment volume. There were decreases in the number of persons employed in the public administration and defence, down 10,300 or 6.7%. The accommodation and food services sector, which decreased 8,700 or 4.3%. And the information and communication sector, which is down 8,000 or 4.2%. The estimated total number of hours worked per week in Q3 2025 stood at 86.4 million hours, up by 0.5 million hours or 0.6% in the year. The chart here shows the hours worked per week by NACE sector for Q3 2025 in green and 2024 in red. While industry reported the second most employment, it was the most hours worked at 12.3 million hours worked per week, an increase of 0.7 million hours on Q3 2024. This is followed by human health and social work, information and communication, and forest and fishing. Both declined 0.4 million hours. They work 6.1 million and 4.5 million hours per week, respectively. The chart in this slide shows the annual volume change in employed persons by the status of their employment. In the latest quarter, there were 21,700 more people who classified themselves as self-employed compared to a year ago, an increase of 6.3%. Of the self-employed, the largest increase was among the self-employed with paid employees, which increased 13,900 or 13.6%. The number of employees increased 13,200 to 2,453,200, an increase of 0.5%. Assisting relatives decreased by 4,200 to 23,800. The chart here looks at the change of employed persons by their working location. In Q3 2025, 557,800 people usually work from home, defined as at least 50% of the days worked in the previous 4 weeks, up from 544,000 in Q3 2024. A further 430,000 were working from home sometimes, up from 400,500. Those who never worked from home declined to just over 1.8 million, from 1.8 million last year. The total hours worked per week by location of work is shown here for each year back to 2019. The total hours worked per week has increased each year, is grown by 11.4% since 2019 and 1.5% since last year. While the majority of hours worked was done by those who never work from home, the hours worked has decreased 1.5% since last year to 52.7 million hours worked per week. Conversely, hours worked by those who sometimes work from home and those who usually work from home increased by 7.3% to 14.7 million hours and 2.2% to 18.9 million hours respectively. Employment by union and non-union membership for the last 6 years is shown here. There were over 1.8 million employees who were not union members compared to 543,200 union members. While non-union membership has grown more than union members since before the pandemic, with a 24.8% increase compared to 12.2%. In the last year, union members' employment grew 5.6% compared to 4.4% growth in non-union membership. Turning now to unemployment, and using the standard ILO criteria, the number of persons aged 15 to 74 years who were unemployed in Q3 stood at 155,400, with an associated unemployment rate of 5.3%. The number unemployed was up by 25,900 or 20% when compared to Q3 2024, when the unemployment rate was 4.5%. The seasonally adjusted estimate for the number unemployed is 147,100, up 12,500 or 9.3% on the previous quarter. And the seasonally adjusted unemployment rate for Q3 was 5.0%, up 0.4 percentage points on the previous quarter. The unemployment rate for Q3 this year and last year shows the increase in unemployment for both males and females. The male unemployment rate increased from 4.2% to 5.2%, while the female unemployment rate is up 0.5 percentage points to 5.2%. The last 6 years of unemployment by sex is shown here. There were 80,800 males classified as unemployed in Q3 2025, the highest since the pandemic in 2020, and up 25.2% on Q3 2024, while there were 74,600 females classified unemployed, again the highest since the pandemic, and up 14.8% on the year. The chart in this slide shows the volume of unemployed by age groups for Q3 2024 and 25. Unemployment has increased for all working age cohorts, with the largest increase in the 15 to 24-year-olds and the 35 to 44-year-olds this year. Unemployment in the 15 to 24-year-olds increased 9,400 or 20.8%, while the 35 to 44-year-olds increased 10,500 or 54.1%. The smallest increase was in the 25 to 34-year-old cohort, increasing by just 600 or 1.8%. This graph shows the annual change in unemployment volume by NUTS 3 regions in Ireland. Unemployment increased across all regions except the Midlands and the South West. The largest increase was in the Mid East, which increased by 9,600 to 26,100. The largest decrease was in the South West, declining 3,500 to 15,500. The chart in this slide shows the seasonally adjusted unemployment rates for males, females, and for all persons aged 15 to 74 over the last 4 years. As previously mentioned, the seasonally adjusted unemployment rate in Q3 2025 was 5.0%, an increase of 0.4 percentage points on the previous quarter, and is the 4th consecutive quarter it has increased. The seasonally adjusted male unemployment rate is 5.1%, up from 4.7% from Q2, while the seasonally adjusted female unemployment rate also increased from 4.4% to 5.0%. Turning attention to the overall labour force, and the ILO-defined labour force comprised of all persons aged 15 and over who are classified as either employed or unemployed was estimated to be more than 2.98 million in Q3. That's up 1.9% on a year ago. The estimated participation rate for Q3 was 66.5%, down 0.1 percentage points. The seasonally adjusted participation rate is 66.1%. That's unchanged from the previous quarter. In terms of the change in the labour force, it has increased by 56,500 to 2,980,900 in Q3. There was a positive demographic effect of 52,300 and a positive participation effect of 4,300 over the year. And this gave rise to a slight decrease in the participation rate over the year of 0.1 percentage points to 66.5%. The seasonally adjusted labour force also increased by 14,000 or 0.5 percentage points on the previous quarter. The chart for males and females in the labour force for Q3 2025 and the previous year is shown here. The number of males in the labour force was 1,575,900, the highest figure reported for males in the series. It's up 33,500 or 2.2% on the year and 333,400 or 17.4% since before the pandemic. The number of females in the labour force is above 1.4 million for the first time. The number of females in the labour force is up 23,000 or 1.7% on the year and 276,300 or 24.5% since Q3 2019. The chart in this slide looks at the estimated number of people in the labour force by age group and shows that there has been a growth in labour market participation among all age categories except youths in the year to Q3 2025. The youths decreased from 394,400 to 387,300, while the largest increase was in the 45 to 54-year-old age group, increasing 19,400 to 683,800. The participation rate by citizenship for Q3 2024 and 25 is shown here. Citizens of the European Union has a participation rate of 82.5%, down from 85.4% from the previous year. The participation rate for Irish citizens declined slightly from 63.9% to 63.7%, while the participation rate for the rest of the world increased 0.9 percentage points to 81.5%. The chart in this slide shows the seasonally adjusted participation rates for males, females, and all persons aged 15 and over a 4-year period, and shows that labour market participation has been reasonably stable now for over 2 years, and that current levels exceed 2021 levels by 1.2 percentage points. For females in the labour force, where the current participation rate is 61.4%, is 1.7 percentage points higher than in 2021, value of 59.7% and up from 61.1% on Q2 2025. For males, at 70.9% in Q2 is also higher by 0.8 percentage points, however it's down 0.4 percentage points from the previous quarter. The estimated number of people who are classified as not in the labour force is almost 1.5 million, up 34,800 or 2.4% on the previous year. The potential additional labour force, that is people who would like to work but are either available but are not actively seeking work, or are seeking work but are not immediately available to begin, was 119,000, a decrease of 10,200 or 7.9% compared with a year ago. Labour market slack, which is comprised of unemployed, part-time underemployed and a potential additional labour force, is shown in this slide here for Q3 2025 as well as the previous year in 2024. The total for labour market slack in Q3 was 416,000, an increase of 29,600 or 7.7% on the same quarter last year. The increases were seen among the unemployed and the part-time underemployed, rising 25,900 and 13,900 respectively. In percentage terms, this equates to a 10.9% increase in part-time underemployed and the previously mentioned 20% increase in unemployment. The potential additional labour force decreased 7.9%. Those that do not want a job increased by 3.9% to 929,800. Those inactive and over 75 increased by 4.9% to 368,300, while those that want a job but are not available and not seeking declined 7.6% to 82,600 in Q3 25. Focusing now on young people, those aged 15 to 24 years in the labour market. The employment rate was 47.5%, down 3.4 percentage points on the year. The unemployment rate was 14.1%, up 2.7 percentage points. The participation rate was 55.3%, down 2.2 percentage points. And the need rate, that is the percentage of 15 to 24-year-olds not in employment, education or training, was 8.3%, an increase of 1.5 percentage points. And so in summary, employment has increased 30,600 to a record 2,825,500. However, the annual growth rate in employment at 1.1% was the lowest seen since the pandemic, and the lowest in more than 10 years outside the pandemic. And this has led to a decline in the employment rate of 0.6 percentage points to 74.7%. For unemployment, we have seen an increase of 25,900 to 155,400, a 20% increase. This gave rise to an increase in the unemployment rate to 5.3%. This has been driven by youths aged 15 to 24 and the 35 to 44-year-old age cohorts. The increase in both employment and unemployment meant that the labour force grew to a record of nearly 3 million. However, the participation rate is down slightly by 0.1 percentage points to 66.5%. Again, this is driven by a drop in participation among youths. That concludes the results presentation for the Labour Force Survey for Q3 2025. LFS quarterly results for Q4 2025 are scheduled for publication in February 2026. Thanks for watching.